me, I'm going to correct that. It's over 55 ounces of soft drinks a day. The average teenage girl drinks about 45 ounces of soft drinks a day. It's an incredible insult to the brain and to the immune system. But anyway, our lady who's trying to lose weight now, she has a little bit more sugar because she's got to get her energy up and running. She has it again. Now her immune system is shut down again for another 4 hours. She has a little bowl of ice cream after dinner because she's been, working so hard all day and she deserves that little treat. And now her immune system has been pretty much shut down for the entire day. And that doesn't count what is happening to the intestinal bacteria, doesn't count what's happening to her brain, doesn't account what's happening throughout the entire body as her body is now robbed of its ability to function normally because of the onslaught of sugar. I think if there is, sometimes people say, Carol, what is the worst dietary offense in the world today? And that question really torments me. Is it really harmful, those some of the rancid fats that we eat? Yes, those are terribly dangerous. But I almost think that the worst evil is the sugar because we eat so very, very much of it and it just burns out our brain. And of course, many people who are trying to lose weight have been turned on to high carbohydrate foods because they're low in calories and so on. And a lot of those high carbohydrate foods come hand in hand with a load of sugar. And sugar stacks on the weight. Never think that fat makes you fat. For the most part, it's sugar that makes you fat. People say to me, I don't understand that. How can sugar possibly make you fat? And I'm going to kind of pull us back again to some of the beginning of the conversation that we were having about carbohydrates and those grains. I don't know of any food that is destined to make people fat faster than to eat a high-grain diet. And now people look at me like I have 3 heads and they say, oh, come on, Carol, that can't possibly be true. But let me ask you this. Those of you who were raised on a cattle farm, I want you to think back what they did to that cow about 6 months before they decided to butcher it for the market. They fattened it up, right? Because they wanted to weigh a lot. They got paid per pound. How did they fatten it up? Did they feed it McDonald's hamburgers and greasy French fries? They fed it grain. Isn't that amazing? Grain actually stimulates an insulin response in the body that is very, very similar to an insulin response that's spiked by sugar. Grain is very high on the glycemic index, which means that it digests very rapidly, is deposited into the bloodstream very rapidly as sugar. And that is what stacks on the weight because insulin is a storage hormone. And that's what we're talking about today, those carbohydrates that are so highly refined that they actually stimulate the deposition of fat into our bodies. Now, people will say to me, now, Carol, you have just taken away everything that I love in this world. What am I going to eat? What am I going to make for dinner? You don't have to call me on the phone and say, Carol, what am I going to make for dinner tonight? Let me just take you by the hand into the fresh produce section of your supermarket and introduce you to the 135 varieties of fresh vegetables that are on the market today. And I invite you to indulge freely in those because those are free foods. You can eat them in just about any amount that you want to, and all you will do for yourself is improve your health, make your brain feel better, make your digestive system work better, and you're going to lose weight in the process because those are the wonderful carbohydrates that your body was designed to eat. And those are the carbohydrates that were created before you were created, and you were designed to eat those. Now, I'm going to leave you with one of my very favorite quotes. And I'd like to have you make a copy of this quote and put it on your refrigerator door. Because, in this whole diet-conscious world that we live in, we are so fixated on what we can eat and what we cannot eat and so on. But if you remember this quote, you will do well every time. And that is a quote from Isaiah that says, "Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your wages for that which does not satisfy? Listen to me, and delight yourself in abundance." Isn't that an amazing quote to have brought into a tape on weight loss to delight yourself in abundance. And yet that's what those wonderful unrefined carbohydrates, primarily in the form of fresh vegetables and fresh fruits, will do for you. You can delight yourself in abundance and enjoy them.
Did Carol answer all the questions we posed at the opening of this video? Have you figured out if carbohydrates are a friend or foe? Here now are Tony and Carol to shed even more light on this often confusing subject.
You just gave a wonderful presentation on carbohydrates and sugar, the anti-nutrient, and I know that the information was quite riveting to everyone who heard it, and probably a little disconcerting and disheartening because we enjoy the foods that we shouldn't eat. Can you talk a little bit about, or a little bit more about sugar addiction and how it comes about?
I think people become addicted to sugar because it really does focus in on those dopamine receptor sites in the brain. And that's why I call it a true addiction. But you know, sugar is not the only food that we are addicted to. Unfortunately, we tend to be addicted to those foods that we love the most dearly, and usually the foods that we eat the most frequently.
So in other words, if someone wasn't sure if they had a food allergy or a food addiction, but they found themselves drawn to the same types of foods every day, would they be a candidate for food allergies or food addiction?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, those two things really do go hand in hand, the allergy and the addiction. Often we become addicted to the foods that we are allergic to. It's almost the body's way of coping with that allergen. It sets up this addictive response. And we feel when we eat the food, we feel better temporarily. And then that whole cycle starts over again. So we find ourselves being addicted to the foods to which we are allergic. The foods that we are most commonly allergic to are the foods, again, that we're mostly addicted to, and that is wheat, corn, and dairy, three staples of the American diet.
Yes, and all of those foods would be allowed on the program in moderation. However, I think the point that I would like to get across is even if they are allowed on the program, if you're finding that you're attracted to them every day, wouldn't it be a good idea for them to remove those products, at least one at a time, to see if their cravings stopped?
Even though it's legal on the program, yes. What is food for one could be poison to another. If you do find yourself being drawn to a food, you eat it every single day, I encourage you to eliminate it for at least 6 weeks. And see what happens. Now, often, Tony, you will go through a period of withdrawal. Just go through it, hang in there, and eliminate it totally.
I always suggest that they drink a lot of water and get as much rest as possible. What are the foods, I think there's 4 or 5 that are very commonly considered allergens. Can you cover those for the people watching today?
Well, it's wheat, the corn, the dairy, and then there's chocolate. Soy has now been elevated to one of the top allergens in this country, probably because of the genetic altering or because we eat it too frequently. Shellfish to a lesser degree. But I primarily tell people to stay away from the wheat, corn, and dairy, and then chocolate.
I've also heard citrus. Have you heard
Citrus,
oranges?
Yes, I hear that. I don't experience a lot in clinical practice, but I would assume especially if you find yourself craving it, stay away from the citrus.
Here's the big question. If you're pretty sure, and most people have a knowledge if they're addicted to sugar or not, most have gone through withdrawals even as we speak this week, this past week on the program. Many have withdrawn from sugar. What would you say to the person, and this question comes up all the time, I know I'm addicted to sugar, but I can't imagine going the rest of my life without a chocolate chip cookie. What would you say to that person? Can you give them any hope?
I can give them a lot of hope, Tony. And one of the reasons that people are addicted to chocolate is because they are magnesium deficient. I had a client come to me one time and said, I love chocolate and there's nothing you can do about that. And when we elevated the magnesium in her diet, her chocolate craving disappeared. Zinc deficiency also triggers certain allergens or certain addictions to foods. And so I tell people to make sure that your minerals are adequate. But secondly, if you are truly addicted, I'm not going to say you can never have it again, but just think of replacing that with something that you can enjoy without harming your body. You know, don't think of yourself as being deprived, but replace it with something that can be equally pleasurable, that's not going to stack on the weight.
And make you feel badly about yourself. And this brings up the last question, and I know this is a loaded question too, but we get this a lot. Now that we've taken the chocolate away from women who experience PMS once a month. They just don't know what to do with themselves and how to cope with it. So what would you suggest for women who are experiencing PMS symptoms of chocolate craving right before their menstrual cycle?
Interestingly enough, the body actually burns magnesium more rapidly in the week prior to the onset of menstruation, and that is what sets up that craving for chocolate and a lot of the emotional symptoms that go along with the PMS too. And so I point people right back to magnesium. It's an incredibly important mineral that we are primarily deficient in.
Okay, so they should check with their doctor or healthcare practitioner.
Or their
and
nutritionist.
Or their nutritionist
Yes.
and get their levels checked and get some help as far as getting that balanced in their bodies.
It can make an enormous difference. Take it all away.
That's great. That's such good information. Thanks so much for being here to share with us today.
I hope you enjoyed this week's lesson and learned many new things. Now you should understand why we do not allow white refined flours and sugars on the PRISM weight loss program. They can truly be addictive and create many health problems, such as insulin resistance, obesity, type 2 diabetes, gallbladder disease, and some cancers. God gave us whole foods such as fruits, vegetables, proteins, and grains, rich in nutrition, to not only sustain life, but to build our physical health. Americans eat more processed, dead calories than any other nation on earth. It's no wonder that after nearly 60 years of eating this way, more and more Americans suffer with poor health. And the number of diseases and disorders is not only increasing among the adult population, but tragically, our children, even the very young ones, are suffering as well. We must connect the rise in disease and disorders to the increased consumption of processed meals and fast food. But there is hope. You can start to make a difference by changing the way you think about food. Find creative ways to help your family eat in a more healthful manner. Please don't let the fear of change hold you back. You will eat differently than the rest of the world. In fact, society will tell you that it's not normal. But remember the words of the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 12 and 13. We have not received the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, that we may understand what God has freely given us. This is what we speak, not in words taught us by human wisdom, but in words taught by the Spirit, expressing spiritual truths in spiritual words. Tomorrow morning, start working on Week 2, Lesson 1 in your Curricula 1, and begin to put into practice the things you learned today. If you are watching this in a support group, please take time at the conclusion of this video to discuss your past week. Was it easy or hard? Share your feelings. Were you challenged, deprived, excited, angry, or set free? There are no right or wrong answers. Just encourage and support one another as you deal with a variety of feelings and circumstances. If you are watching as a participant in the correspondence program, take a few minutes now to jot down any questions, concerns, or praise reports you may have. This will prepare you to call your correspondence consultant within the next day or two. If you are experiencing the program individually, I hope you'll invite your accountability partner to watch the lecture with you each week. It will provide an environment for sharing, similar to a support group. If not, be sure to give your partner a call with an update on how you are doing. And don't forget to turn in your food sheets.
The program has allowed me to be reintroduced to myself and getting to know myself better and just bringing out the true essence of me. And the readings, the daily readings are like, you read it in the morning and it's like jump starts your day. And when prior to starting the program, I was exercising 3 times a week, jogging on Saturdays, and I kept telling my trainer, I said, what's going on? We did it as a group because I do Taekwondo. And I kept telling him, I said, what's going on here? I'm gaining weight instead of losing. And he says, well, that's the muscle, you're gaining muscle. And I said, yeah, but something's got to go on here. So 2 people in my group I noticed a change in them. And they always kept talking, and we always talked, but I said, what are you guys? I said, you guys are doing something. They said, well, I said, no, you got to share this. You are doing something. And so they shared with me the program, and it wasn't time to start yet. And when I did start, I said, boy, this is something. I can do this, you know. And we just came together as a group, it's like a little family, you know. It's like an extension of your family. And then with the most important thing I think about the program is that it does include God. And it allows you to, like I said, in phase 1 to me is like getting to know yourself again, being reintroduced to yourself. And I think a part of phase 2 for me is it was understanding what you've learned in phase 1. And phase 3 tends to be like a transformation. You really see the change of everything that's happened to you and that's going on in your life. And then phase 4 is like affirmation, like a balance, like everything is coming together from the other phases. And it's just, I thank God for this program. It's a blessing. It has truly enriched my life. And I mean, it has taught me how to eat. I look at weight. I look at the whole weight process as something totally different now. To me, I've tried many different things, and to me, this is the best thing yet. And I don't see why everybody doesn't want to do it and get rid of the sugars and the white flour products that damage our system. And it's just been a blessing.
You have a new, exciting week of discovery ahead of you. You'll learn several new tools designed to help you become everything God created you to be. The workbook lessons will walk you through the process of selecting your goal weight, or what we call your right weight. You will also choose what we call your true you picture. This important picture sets forth a visual reminder of where you are headed in your weight loss journey. Long-distance runners say they always keep the finish line in their mind's eye. They never lose sight of their goal, or they may get lost. In the same way, if we begin our weight loss journey without a map or an idea of where we are headed, we may lose our way, or give up before we reach the finish line. However, when we keep our minds focused on the rewards to come, our journey becomes easier. Completing your daily workbook lessons is an important part of your journey. Whether or not you do the assignments may determine how successful your weight loss journey will be. So stay enthusiastic and have fun with the lessons. Keep listening to your audio tape, and as soon as you are comfortable, begin to repeat it out loud. Don't forget to fill in your food journal sheet, and be prepared to turn it in next week. In closing, be encouraged with the words written by St. Paul found in the book of Philippians, chapter 3. Not that I have already obtained all this, or have already been made perfect, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. Brothers, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Keep your eyes on the prize before you. I believe in you, and I know that you can complete your journey one day at a time. Have a great week.